Hello everyone, and thanks so much for tuning in. I got to sit down for a great conversation with Father Carl Braschoss on today's episode. Just past the 22-minute mark, you'll notice that the video transitions over to a still frame for the last 12 minutes or so of our conversation. We unfortunately experienced a technical difficulty on the video end of things, yet thankfully still had the audio recording. Therefore, we kept our conversation rolling, and we apologize for this inconvenience, yet we sure hope you enjoy our conversation. Well, welcome everyone to AbbeyCast, the official podcast of Daylesford Abbey. This is our second episode. Today we welcome our guest, Father Carl Braschoss in Norbertine, part of the community here at Daylesford. He is also the pastor at St. Gabriel's Parish in South Philadelphia?
South Philadelphia, yep.
Okay, awesome. And Father Carl is actually the inspiration for this podcast. It was a conversation that he and I had one of my first days probably working at the Abbey. He popped in the office, introduced himself, and we just started a brief conversation, but it was a substantial one. And, you know, you're only here on Fridays because you're in the city for the majority of the week. And I was like, wow, if I could catch Carl on a Friday when he's here and we could record that conversation, I think other people would appreciate it. So here we are today getting the opportunity to sit down and kind of go back into that what we were talking about, hopefully let a little bit more unfold. But I'm really grateful that you're with us today, so thank you.
Great to be here.
And would you want to give any background on yourself, maybe where you're from? Are you from Philly like a lot of the Norbertines here at Daylesford?
No, I'm not. I'm actually from North Jersey originally.
Okay.
Lived there a few years, then moved to North Carolina, lived there a few years in the Raleigh-Durham area, and then my parents settled north of Philadelphia, not far from I guess where Philly becomes Montgomery County, right up Broad Street, kind of by there.
All right.
Melrose Park. So.
All right. Awesome.
But I grew up in this area in terms of schooling, and then with the formation with the Norbertines here at Daylesford. So.
Okay. Very good. Well, like I said, it's good to have you in today because we very quickly, upon introduction, dove into a pretty good topic of acknowledging the limitations brought on by the pandemic and the restrictions of social distancing, particularly around the challenges that presented to worship, or in some cases, maybe, like in God closing a door, there was a window being opened by God, new opportunities too, right? So Father Carl had brought up this idea of giving peace, right? We can't shake, or we shouldn't shake someone's hand or give them a hug or kiss.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to let you run with it. Yeah.
Well, I guess I'm more connected to this rite of the Mass now because it's been kind of curtailed, and there's been the bishops have put the limitations on that because of the COVID situation and not wanting to spread contact at this point. But for me in particular, I guess in Grays Ferry, though, which has a history of kind of racial violence, with everything that's going on now with the protesting, rightfully so, people are, concerned and really upset that really people are not being treated well in a way that's really unprecedented. And in our neighborhood that really in the past has seen such racial tension and really has the potential to really heal from that, it's got me more thinking about that rite of peace that is a part of the Mass before we receive Jesus in the Eucharist, in Holy Communion. We're invited really to reflect on how we are in communion with ourselves and with our brothers and sisters. And so I guess now that we go from what we've had in the past, which is let us now offer a sign of peace, as that peace is offered to us through the priest, now we have the opportunity really to, it's almost like an awkward part of the Mass. Like it becomes like, okay, so I want to say peace to people next to me, but what do I do? And there's like this kind of quiet awkwardness. Maybe before it was a bit more like there was a lot of responses. It could be like in some churches, like a big bear hug to somebody right next to you. To other people, it could be what I call the sprinkler method. If there's a lot of people, you're just kind of going around like this. And either it becomes like very personal to one person or a couple people that are in your family, or it becomes very kind of like superficial in a certain
So
sense.
true. That's
It
so
doesn't
true.
have teeth in a way.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, in these days especially, when peace, the peace that the Lord gives, not this peace that's really just a cliche, when it's more and more important. Because if we really have peace in our hearts, then we really can engage with other people from a place of real understanding, even as we disagree.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought to myself, as we remember Scripture, and Jesus says to us, when you come to the altar and you remember that, if you come there bringing a gift and you remember that you have something against your brother or vice versa, leave your gift at the altar, go and be reconciled first, and then come back.
Mm-hmm.
And those are really challenging words, because I think it reminds us that we really need to be able to be aware of who are we not in relationship with. And I don't mean like we don't have a relationship, but I mean, who are we disconnected with?
Right.
Who are people we avoid? Who are people that are avoiding us? Who are people that we don't want to talk to? And so forth, And I think for me, like I've been more conscious, especially when I was beginning the period of private masses, like who am I in that place with? And can I remember those people and in that moment ask the Lord for the grace to love them? And really try to wish from my heart that peace and that shalom type of peace, that fullness of well-being, and not just something that's very superficial potentially. That just like wellness of their whole being, because I think when we can do that, recalling people that we need to be reconciled with and desiring their peace and the guidance to love them, then I think that really prepares us well to receive the Lord in humility, knowing, wow, like I got this person and this person, and okay, so in humility we are in communion with the Lord, knowing that He needs to do some work with us, and we need to be open to that. So I just thought, like, as we remember that could be a way in this time, especially when we don't just quickly give a hug to a person next to us. Because my thought is, likely the people that are next to us, I mean, it could be different, are likely people that it's easy to be in peace with, hopefully, And so maybe that doesn't mean a whole lot. Andrew, peace, you know what I mean? Like, we already have a good relationship, so it doesn't, but how about thinking of somebody that we're really struggling with? Lord, help me to love them. Just remember briefly, it's a brief rite, but I think that would be helpful. And I think that allows us to enter more deeply into what I believe the Lord is wanting us to do, because again, we need to be in communion with our brothers and sisters to be in communion with the Lord. It's one package.
Sure. A house divided against itself cannot stand, right? Yeah. Mass has certainly taken on a more contemplative feel to it, right? This whole time has been incredibly contemplative, but your reflection upon, like you're saying, the private Mass and how that really becomes an internalized experience of seeking that reconciliation, I'd imagine that's incredibly profound, being a priest and celebrating the sacrament. And now I'm hearing a lot of Norbertine buzzwords related to the charism of healing and reconciliation come out in what you're describing. Would you want to go into that more? It's, explicit Norbertine here?
St. Norbert was one to really be able to use the gifts that God has given him. And a lot of it was just, you might call it today people skills, but he was charismatic and he knew how to draw people together and use his personality to draw people in. But he knew that he didn't have it within him to bring people that were really at odds with each other and going to kill each other, really. Families and
it was a different time, right?
It was. And it was a time when people didn't just have a minor disagreement and get onto Facebook and just, that is harmful. But, I mean, we're talking about blood feuds and major problems to draw in family members and create whole divisions, right, that were really bloody. And Norbert knew that by himself he couldn't deal with that and handle that. But he tried to bring people ultimately to the Eucharist, knowing that that's the source of his life and the source of healing. And ultimately, all the while he was inviting, he was praying for people that were at odds. They weren't people that he was at odds with, but he was praying for them, that they would be open and that God would bless him and use him. Prayer vigils, offering masses, and so forth. And really, I believe that that's what allowed him to be able to be an instrument of healing even within Mass.
Mm-hmm.
Like the various writings, which aren't many in our tradition,
Sure.
really show that Norbert, in the middle of Mass, people would be moved by something at Mass, and people would be desiring reconciliation. And that was happening at Mass. Imagine if we would see that today.
Sure.
But there's a power to Norbert's prayer as a holy person, but the fidelity to want peace for people who are at odds. And so I think today it's a very practical way for all of us, because who's not at odds with someone?
Right.
Or some movement, or some whatever.
It almost feels like that's the name of the game right now, is to like pick a boogeyman. But when we can see from a higher perspective, we're getting to these more inclusive and integral topics of reconciliation, of peace, of communion, like you said, of working toward that sacrament with the right sort of process, which includes that reconciliation piece, because you can feel great about your life and everything, but as soon as you go one step beyond that outside yourself, and you consider, like you said, those relationships. And as you were saying, this person, that person, I'm probably thinking, that's only within your own family.
Oh, yeah, well, in the community. People have this conception sometimes that a religious community can be, no issues or problems. The reality is God brings people close together so that they can help each other to grow in holiness. And usually that means conflict to get there. So we're trying to focus on that as best we can here, because we know that we need to be able to do that to go forward. But I just think it's a very practical way, remembering that Mass is so integral to us, and we can't be in communion with the Lord without being in communion, to remember that and to enter into the prayer for peace for those people and really be aware of who those are. Ask God to help us to be aware.
Yeah.
Because when we ask for something directly and we're open to our part in making that happen, I think the Lord's going to grant healing and peace. I mean, you know what I mean? Why would the Lord not want to grant that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just think it's something that not only enters into our tradition, but also is something very practical. Because the more we're in relationship with others, or at least not opposed to them, I think we're predisposing ourselves to blessings.
I think of the words of his spiritual teacher, Ram Dass, also known as Richard Alpert. He talks about have you ever noticed how many angry people there are at peace rallies? And it's a reflection upon what are we harboring within us, despite the perception of the action itself or whatever it is. What is the root of that? I often think of myself sometimes, and going to my social media or turning on the news or something, reading an article, watching something, and it can so easily evoke emotions that are hurtful, not just to that other person, but to ourselves too. Right. I've also heard, I don't know who it's credited to, but something to the effect of anger is a poison that does more to the vessel that it's housed within as opposed to what it's poured upon. Yeah. Right? And I'm just oh man, if every time I see this person's face talking on TV, I'm feeling these toxic emotions within me, it's that's also an intention I have for it. It's whoa, where is the larger Christ within that call to, like you said, challenge, first of all, but more importantly, the reconciliation and communion that comes from that.
But even before that comes the opportunity for intimacy with the Lord, because the more we can be aware of that and invite the Lord into that, the more we're aware of even the place where we need to grow. And that already, if we're really in a bad place with someone, maybe you're just totally blocking them out.
I think too that I like to read about psychology and have a brief background in that, but the concept of projection, and the idea of shadow. We have parts of ourselves that are undesirable, right? No one's perfect, and we so easily project those onto people or situations, and that's a tough one. And that internal process that, first of all, you're talking about personally, but then you're connecting to your Norbertine heritage. Is apparent there. So in pastoring your parish during this time, how have you found the home church in particular, right? Because the city of Philadelphia is shut down. You're back operational to some capacity now?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
So you're probably getting a trickle coming back in, right?
Oh, no, we're getting more than a trickle.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, our challenge is raising overall the attendance, but I think
Sure.
we have probably 80% of the people back.
That's great.
But it's
That's great.
just trying to build from there.
So now, in terms of your relationship with your parishioners in the parish, what sort of movements, could I say, did you see within the home church, or observations did you have during that time?
During this most recent period or in general?
Well, I mean, if you want to be as specific as now, but then make it bigger, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think, again, you have, like at this time, people that I think are very, very devoted people, and I think other people that will pass the church. You see a lot of that. If I have confession on Saturdays, instead of being in the church, I try to be outside the church because that might be a way to draw people in. But a lot of people pass the church and will bless themselves.
Okay.
So there's a lot of sort of popular devotion, but there's not always a movement beyond that.
Okay.
And so I think it's a call for people that are coming often, to help them to realize that the work of evangelization has always been needed, but I think in years past it's been something that has been, in a sense, seemed to be not needed because the church has been so full.
Right.
And I think now the opportunity to help people to see that really the adventure is to be kind of reaching out to people. It's amazing just being outside and talking to people and see who comes by, the stories that you hear from people. And yeah, so I think it's the opportunity, again, for those that are involved to take the next step, which is stretch yourselves, not just coming to church, but finding the Lord where you are, and inviting and explaining, what is it that brings you to church? You know what I mean? And sharing that witness, because I think that's what ultimately draws people. And I think other people, it's trying to get creative for people that are just passing. What is it? What do we need to do to reach them? Where's the disconnect here? And to try to talk and to see, what can we do to draw people in? And sometimes I think it's going to be just more natural events, maybe just being in the parks or being in places where people are. And most recently, there's been a movement during this time, some people from the parish and neighborhood are starting this volleyball league.
Okay.
Right? And it's 3 days a week, and it's in the evenings. It's 3 hours a night. And I go down there, it's kids, it's adults, it's people are drinking, hanging out after. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And it's really an opportunity, since so many people are there. That is the church.
Yes.
The people that are coming and not coming are there.
Yes.
So we need to move the church down there
Yeah.
in a certain way by being a part of that.
Yeah.
And I think that's how we connect with people and also help them to understand what we do offer, that I think has been sort of clouded over. So I think those are the movements, really, to kind of help people to see overall the need to go out and then actually have that happen, so people that are maybe disaffected can get a different look.
Absolutely. It's a much broader, expansive view of the home church. You're talking about it's taking on the morphology of a volleyball game.
Yeah, or
to some extent, right?
Whatever else it is. Yeah. And seeing the goodness in that and the blessing, and just meeting people where they are, and drawing them in, Because it's not just staying on the volleyball field. There is an element to coming to ultimately to worship.
Absolutely.
Just like Norbert, he used his skill and his charism and his personal gifts to draw people into the Eucharist. But he wasn't out there, he wasn't sitting in the Eucharist waiting for people to come inside. He was out there on the street, Yeah. So I think it's that same idea today.
2 Pope Francis quotes come to mind on that point you're making. The first is, shepherds should smell like sheep, right? And the second is, he made a comment to the effect of the church needs to be like a field hospital, I think he said, right? And those are 2 very practical examples, and uplifting examples, too, of how that happens, Because like you said, bringing in those people who have been disenchanted by organized religion or the Catholic Church or whatever, that concept of belonging at a time like this is so critical.
Right.
That's great work. It sounds like you're doing there. And I was even going to say, before you got into the whole volleyball bit, you started with standing outside the church, meeting people, I mean, I didn't grow up in the city. I'm a Jersey guy. That's why when I said before South Philly, that were the parishes, I wasn't entirely sure. I grew up in the suburbs. That wasn't something I experienced. So that's so cool that you can do that.
Well, I mostly did too, but my father was one that was really good at that.
Okay.
When we were young, it was almost like, all right, Dad, we got to go. It's like he's talking to people he just met. And he's talking to him like he knows him forever. And it's like, Dad, we got to go. But the thing is, I think something of that sort of rubbed off.
Yeah.
Because I think if we can just connect and engage people and get them into conversation, invite them, and be gentle about the whole thing, and to see the goodness of the person and the trajectory for growth and all that's already happening, then I think that is attractive. And I think that's the way the Lord does it, and I think we just have to continue that.
Yes.
Because the more people we get to do that, the more inviting the church is going to be, and then what goes on inside becomes more understandable, and not just like, what's this? I haven't been here in 25 years or whatever. Or, why do you do all that stuff? Why do you do all this? You can maybe, a person might ask you and you can share what that means. What that means to you.
That's very important because too often, and this is not a criticism of apologetics, but too often people jump right to that piece of it and giving some technical reason why this is done or but in terms of what it means to them, right? I think times like this really kind of create a crucible for all of us to individually and then collectively as a church to think about what does this mean to us?
But it's really a both and, because as we grow, it's really, as we know the Lord, and hopefully that's the primary thing, as we know the Lord and come to be in relationship with Him, we come to know that He's given us the church and given us tradition in the best sense. So as we understand the why, and then we connect to that personally, then the apologetics and the sharing of the faith becomes very natural, and not like with a club, but really with a very nice touch, bringing the information that we need, but always person-centered. Always like, where's this person? And not like, let me impress this person with how much I know.
And that's become the perceived norm, I feel like, with social media and the way that dialogue is so easily cut off. And there's that personal pastoral aspect is totally absent. And it's just like, I said my point, I shut you down, end of discussion, right?
Adversarial,
So a much needed component of dialogue within our society that gets at something more, right? It gets at healing, it gets at union, it gets at reconciliation. It sounds like you've got some pretty intense work you're doing in the city there at the parish and with the people, and it sounds like that you're taking them in a direction that is keeping up with this very strange, disorienting time.
But blessed time. And really,
yes.
I really see, though, in our area, again, we've been through a lot, and we're not unique in that, like no other area, but we have a trajectory, but I believe with all the diversity of peoples that are there and the way the area is evolving to with more, what people call gentrification, or more variety of peoples coming in, and more development of homes and so forth, we really have an opportunity to really be a healing presence in an area that has not seen that, racially, culturally, and in other ways. So to be close to that and potentially a part of what God may be doing is really exciting too.
It is. It is. Yeah, that's what I was saying from the start. This is a time of great awareness, We're becoming aware of so many things in the world that maybe collectively we were asleep to. Father Andrew Safferny gave a homily a few Sundays ago about secrets being revealed, and it related to the gospel of that day. But in terms of now and what this situation exposes regarding hunger and healthcare and so many things, but in terms of looking at the silver lining and the grace within all this, it's just abundant. It really is. So you're in the city for most of the week, and then you shoot to the Abbey on weekends.
Yeah, to get in touch with the community, the trees, lots of things.
What's that transition like, going from city to Abbey, Abbey to city? And for those unfamiliar with the Abbey, people listening from who knows where, Abbey is in Paoli, Pennsylvania, or in Chester County. A lot more greenery out this way and some rolling hills as opposed to the urban landscape of Philadelphia. What's that transition like for you?
It's really blessed in many ways, because I like to think of the drives that I have in the car. They're about a half an hour, 40 minutes.
Nice.
And it's really nice times because it's quiet, and I feel like it's like a little bit of a cell of quiet, and just it happens to be mobile, you know. And so to have that quiet, maybe a little chance to listen to some music that's uplifting. But I really enjoy it. But I got to say that with all the beauty of the city and the diversity of peoples and so many peoples in a small place, to be here and to have the spaciousness and nature is very uplifting for me, and it really helps me to connect to the Lord in a very beautiful but subtle way, you know, and it's really nourishing. I find that really helpful. And really, we live as community members, and so I'm in a unique place that for now, I'm in the rectory by myself. Well, now my parents actually are there.
Okay.
They were actually in a period of transition through some health things. But that's been its own challenge, being down there. So to be able to come back here has been really helpful. So yeah, it really works well, because I think if I were down there all the time, that would really be difficult. But the combination, it feels like it really works.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. It's a beautiful place to come to and to retreat from. I mean, or not to retreat from, to retreat to, for sure. Have you been down to the Chapel of the Baptist recently?
I have, yeah. I used to do work on the grounds when I was in formation. So I still do grounds work when I'm here, just for exercise and for enjoyment and stuff. And yeah, I see they've really cleaned it up nicely. Yeah. And it looks like there's some more that could be done. I don't know, like where the developers are going with those some of the trees and things.
Right.
But it really it appears like things have been really cleared up for some new growth too. It used to be just kind of like a little bit let go.
Yes.
And I think they've done like the dredging of the pond and some clearing away of some dead trees. So I'm excited for what's going to come of that as a space to go and just to have a little bit of time away. Yeah,
it's been, like we've talked about, you know, a great grace within this time of challenge and change to look at those opportunities, and that was one of them. The property of the Chapel of the Baptist is a former spring house. For those that have maybe not seen the program that we put out, Father Andrew Safferny did an episode of Art and Artists at the Abbey, in which he gives a history of the spring house, and we actually hike out there. And when he and I hiked out there that day, we were up to like chest high grass. We were in chest high grass, and we were picking ticks off us afterwards when we came back. So the grounds crew here has done an incredible job of cleaning it up and making it accessible, and as we begin to welcome private retreats and to make it a venue on the property to pray and be still and silent. But it really helps people immerse within that natural component that's so present with the Abbey. So you mentioned being in a car, feeling like it's a cell. I think I've actually heard Richard Rohr describe that experience in a very similar way, about how we so, in today's world, lack silence and moments for silence, that sometimes driving in a car is that moment.
As long as you have your cell phone unquiet, because that's where it can be not so, you know, that discipline around the media is important, because it's good, but if you have no ability to disconnect from that, I find that, like, if I don't do my prayers, the times of the office, the divine office, and even that personal prayer, really, I notice the difference. It really is like my battery's really draining. And so that time, both that prayer and even just the quiet of letting the mind kind of go a little and chewing on the day, you know, is really, really helpful. So I'm grateful for those opportunities. About half hour, 40 minutes. It's like a prayer period sort of each way. You know?
So now you mentioned a few things, because I was going to ask you what allows you to really connect with God or feel close to God. You've mentioned your work at the parish, your engagement with the people. You've mentioned working on the grounds here, and you've mentioned the act of coming to the Abbey and being here. Are there any practices that you maybe haven't mentioned that are helpful to you?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of ones that I've found, especially in these last 3 months, that have been very beautiful. Devotional prayer, which I was never, I would do it, but it was never like feeling like my go-to type of prayer. But like the Chaplet of Divine Mercy, we were praying that like Monday through Thursday in church, and it was like the power of that was hitting me, and I would be like weeping, praying, and it was just like praying that for different types of people and myself, and I don't know, there's like a power to the tradition if it's entered into. The divine office, which is something that it's like breathing we do.
Right.
And it's something that I find when I'm doing it personally and I don't have I'm not with the group, so I can pause. And if something's striking me, almost like Lectio Divina, I can kind of like stay there a little bit and let that percolate and then continue. So it's like, I guess I'm discovering dimensions of our tradition that I find as I have more time to enter into those from a personal dimension, like I find they're really becoming more alive.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. This has been a great time for that because we've gotten so used to doing things out of the sake of repetition, right? That making it very conscious and intentional can crack it open to, like you said, a whole new dimension of understanding and growth and worship. And that's great. Well, it's been a pleasure to have you on today. It's been a great conversation. I'm glad we took more time from our initial meet and greet to really kind of unpack things a little bit. It's been great to get to know you more and get to know your ministry more, and this great emphasis or enthusiasm is the word I'm looking for your vocation and your Norbertine heritage here. So thanks for being a guest on the podcast today. And
great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to have you back sometime.
Sounds good.
You're a hard man to get a hold of sometimes, but that's life. And like you're here on Fridays, so we want to allow you that time to be at peace too, without having to be hassled by me. But it's really been a pleasure, Father Carl, and I hope to do it again soon.
Thank you. God bless you.
God bless you. And God bless everyone at home. We're really grateful for tuning in today and listening to us. Coming up from Springhouse, the media ministry of Daylesford Abbey, which you can visit at any time by going to daylesford.org/springhouse-media. We have Rock the Word 153 coming up, another episode of that with Father John Zagarello on Friday, August 14th. He's going to be diving into a tune that is probably familiar to folks at home, and that'll be a reflection on the Assumption. And then on Friday, August 21st, we have another episode of Art and Artists at the Abbey. Father Andrew Safferny will be diving deeper into the life of St. Norbert, as well as looking into the Augustinian influence on the order. And that will be an appropriate lead up to the Feast of St. Augustine on the 28th at the end of August. So
now these are all recorded, so we can, if we don't catch these live.
Yes, All the programs here on the Springhouse are released on Fridays, usually around 5 a.m.
Well, you get up early.
That's when I wake up, but that's not for everybody. They're released around 11 a.m. And then they are accessible at any time. At daylesford.org/springhouse-media. You can also pull them up on Facebook and YouTube, and definitely feel free to cross-promote and share this stuff through the parish's different platforms. But if you are interested at all, feel as if you're being called in the direction of religious vocation, be it to the Norbertine order or just in a broader sense, by all means pursue that discernment. And if you wish to reach out to the Abbey to help guide you in that process, you can go to daylesford.org/vocations or email vocations@daylesford.org. And the Abbey is really a beautiful location. And for those that have not been here, you can check us out online, daylesford.org. Check out pictures of the grounds. As Father Carl has described, it's the ideal setting to get away, especially if you have a busy life in a busy place, which I think is a lot of us nowadays, right? But if you'd like to reach out about scheduling a private retreat here at the Abbey, the number is 610-601-8702. And we will get you set up with a nice time for yourself here to grow in your relationship with God. And as always, Springhouse media programs are free of charge. This is a pay-it-forward endeavor, and we're incredibly grateful for those that are able to support us by your financial donations or by sharing this program through social media, through forwarding on email, text message, whatever ways you get news out to your friends and family and like-minded people in the world. We would be incredibly grateful for your support through sharing of it or through, of course, a donation. And you can do that by going to daylesford.org/springhouse-media/support. And again, it's daylesford.org/springhouse-media/support. So thanks, everyone. God bless, and have a great rest of your day. content from the Springhouse is available free of charge. If you find this ministry is of service to you, we hope that you will support us in providing this content in an ongoing manner. We consider this a pay-it-forward endeavor. Not only would your donation help us to cover the expenses of producing its content, you would make it possible for us to offer it to others as well. As long as we are able, by your generosity, we will continue to produce content which we believe will serve the church. We hope that you might become a partner in this ministry. Please click the link in the description below this video to make a donation.